We're in, and Mike Coulter has just said, gosh, that's just like Thunderbirds, because it counts down from 5, 4, and here we are live in the Good Listening To show. I'm Chris Grimes, What's Your Story? Very enigmatically and profoundly and wonderfully, I have Mike Coulter in the show. I'm excited to talk to you, well, because you are Manifesto Man, because that's one of your great expertise. And if I may also call you Wingman as well, because you are a co-collaborator with the wonderful and enigmatic, similarly, David Hieatt. So you are the creative director of the Do Lectures. You're also a presenter with your own flagship show within Do Radio, but also you have Tiny Habits Business Class, which is something we're going to talk about as well, at your wonderful website, which is called habitualize.com. This is just where I'm blowing some happy smoke at you, Mike. So Mike Coulter, you're looking great, great shirt, popping off for the visuals, but also you're sat, for those watching, in front of one of the most iconic calendars known to man, which is the Sendell calendar, which you inform me sells out very regularly, because you've almost got to get in the queue to get one. It reminds me of a cricket scoreboard.
Yes.
And it's also got the font, which I think is extra beautiful, that is the same font as the New York subway.
That's about right. My wife asked me what I want for Christmas, and actually I saw these calendars that they were designed in 1966 by an Italian designer in New York, and the Italian designer also designed the New York subway signage, which may or may not be the same font. I'm not sure about that. And it's the only calendar in the world in the Museum of Modern Art. Oh, that'd be interesting to have. And then I'd have to mess about over 12 months in the set that I shoot, video conversation like this in all my Zoom calls. I can just leave it as it is. So it's I think it's Sendell, something like that. And they do indeed sell out. And I love it. It's just I love its simplicity. I like that whole era, the era of Charles and Ray Eames were the great designers in America at the time, and it was also an era that, as a very, very young man, it's the Mad Men era of advertising, and that's one of the things that shaped me. And we will be talking about that in the show, Chris, about how advertising shaped me. And it was 1960s advertising, the great Volkswagen ads, Doyle Dane Bernbach, the whole Madison Avenue thing. So I'll be touching on that today. So I'll be unpacking that a little bit later.
And I'm intrigued to get you on the open road of your copywriting chops and where else you've trained, because I'm also intrigued to talk to you all about the enigmatic professor who is BJ Fogg.
The great BJ Fogg, yes, very influential in my life was BJ. Yes, so lovely I'm happy to pick up on that.
And that also reminded me of Phileas Fogg, of course, which is Around the World in 80 Days, which is different. But anyway, I'm just making connections.
That's right. And actually, funny enough, in the 1980s, 90s, Phileas Fogg's advertising account was with one of the great British agencies called Bartle Bogle Hegarty, and they did some fantastic work then. So it's totally relevant.
Wonderful. And the Do Lectures first came to my attention when I saw it just sung to me. You'll notice where I go with my own color schemes. There was a picture that David Hieatt uploaded of a yellow door standing on its own in a field in Cardigan. And I went, wowzers. And it sung to me. And then this idea of you cross through the gateway of the door, old me to new you. And I just thought that's your vibe attracts your tribe, is what I'm trying to say. So
exactly. I mean, David is phenomenally good at that sort of thing. And David and I both joke that we're both working class lads who never went to university. But actually, we did go to the best university. We worked in advertising agencies, which was the best university a young creative could go to, in our era. I think it's changed these days. So David's got a very good, David's a brilliant copywriter, but he's also got a very good eye for an image. The picture tells 1,000 words cliche. And I think that's one of the reasons why they do lectures, particularly the 3-day event in July, which for people who don't know what the Do Lecture is, the mainstay is a 3-day live event in July where 20 great speakers come from all around the world to talk in a cowshed to 100 people who want to listen to them. And the ad lib that I always trot out, that I pretend that I've thought about on the fly, is, if you haven't heard of the Do Lectures, I'd say it's a bit like TED Talks. Then I pause for effect and say, but it's on a farm. Then I pause it in the far, far west of Wales. It's impossible to get to. And then the final pause, it says, and it's for cool people, unlike TED Talks, which is my implicit kind of aside, I suppose, about. But yeah, so the Do Lectures has been a huge part of my life for the last 10 years. And just one final thing about the creative director. I'm not actually a creative director for Do Lectures. I'm much more sort of menial than that. I'm sort of the creative director on special projects and things like that we do, like manifesto courses and workshops.
Yes.
We wrote a report a few years ago that went down where it was all about side projects. We take deep dives into subjects.
Yes, side hustles or side quests.
Exactly that. Yes. And so it's been a lot of fun. Is a lot of fun. Yep.
And one of your current most exciting side quests is Do Radio, and I know that you co-host with David. 3 Wins is your podcast.
Sorry, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, 3 Wins. Do Radio is a live radio station, broadcast 24 hours a day, 8 different shows. So you get 3 times to listen to it a day, and there's an app and it's archived. You can stream it these days if you wish. But yeah, and I sort of, for me, it's really it's in each show I'm kind of and it's very much like this conversation actually, Chris. So I feel really comfortable with you today. It's very much. You know that old saying about entrepreneurs, an entrepreneur is somebody that jumps off a cliff and builds the plane on the way down. Well, 3 wins on Do Radio is like, Dave and I are figuring ourselves out each week as we do the show. And we don't know what each is going to talk about. We know it's always going to be about either time, money, or mojo. Those are the 3 stables. Every single week we talk about different aspects of time, money, and mojo. But when we press the go button every time we record it, I have no idea what he's going to talk about.
I just love that. Time, money, or mojo, as you said, with your
exactly.
Love that.
And I say that the accent there, the northern thing, that's something I've played on my whole life. Because the other thing about advertising, when I went into it, it was dominated by northern in London when I was working in the 90s. It was dominated by northern working class kids, and we used to play on that. You'd been blunt and no nonsense and all that kind of thing. So
Ecky thump. I'd just like to say at that
point.
Oh
well, yeah. In fact, when my wife and I got married, she's from Lancashire. To keep, I'll call them rival families. Let's say our 2 different families. Mine from Yorkshire. My wife
like the Capulets and the Montagues.
It was a bit Shakespearean. Again, I know Shakespeare comes at the end of the show, but yeah, and so to try and keep harmony at the dining table, we gave Yorkshire pudding and Lancashire hot pot to all the guests, which kind of was a diplomatic menu, let's call it.
And that's before tea, and we get the scones versus scone debacle.
Oh yeah, well that's and now I live in Cornwall. You've got the Devon and Cornwall thing. Is it cream or jam first on your scones?
Yes,
all that. Yeah.
Wonderful. So let's get on the open road of the structure of the show. Can't wait to get you on the open road of this. If you've not seen the show before, for those watching and listening, where have you been? I'm about 270 into these monkeys. This is the show in which I invite movers, makers, shakers, mavericks, influencers, and also personal heroes into a clearing or serious happy place of my guests' choosing as they all arrive to share with us their stories of distinction and genius. And you'll notice in blowing some happy smoke at you, Mike Coulter, how qualified you are for many, many, many of those skittles that I knocked down to bring you into the show.
Thank you.
So, yes, it's going to involve a clearing a tree, a lovely, juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's going to be some alchemy, some gold, a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a golden baton, and a cake. So it's absolutely all to play for. So any questions before I get you on the open road of this, Mike Coulter?
Let's get rolling, Chris. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Welcome aboard, sir. So first of all, your clearing. Where is your serious happy place? Where does Mike Coulter go to get clutter-free, inspirational, and able to think?
Yeah, I was kind of torn on this actually. There's 2 places. The first one was going to be the Atlantic Ocean. One of the reasons that we live in Cornwall was, ever since being a very young man, I've always enjoyed being in the water. I've always been surfing and stuff like that. And as I'm getting older, I still surf, but I body surf now, and it's just a pair of fins and a hand plane. And my happy place is that even when it's a crowded day in the lineup, is paddling another 20 meters further back out, rolling over on my back, looking up at the sky. You know, there's a nice gentle swell going, and that's just my happy place. It's meditative. There's a lot of research on the psychology of being in seawater and mood. In fact, believe it or not, around the coast of the UK, there's some NHS services help people with depression and low mood by taking them out in the water. There's something, and you'll have heard a thing about surfers getting stoked and stuff like that. Well, there's a physiological phenomenon whereby being in salt water actually enhances a person's equilibrium, and it's all to do with balance in the ear. So what I know, sorry, but then I thought actually no, but there needs to be a tree near, and you know, other than a log of a tree bouncing up and down in the Atlantic, which won't have many.
Which, by the way, would work for me.
Okay. Well, I just took it slightly close to home. I mean, literally slightly close to home. I mean, literally down the road from me. So the beach is about 5 or 6 miles from where I live, but even nearer is one of the wonders of the modern world, I think, which is a cycle trail. It's called the Camel Trail. And that, without doubt, is my happy place. We lived in Cornwall. We moved to Cornwall 30 years ago. Then we couldn't make it work, and we moved and lived in Edinburgh for 17 years. But we came back about 12 years ago, and I've pretty much ridden my bike on the Camel Trail, certainly every week, but some weeks every day. I've literally thousands and thousands of times, and it's absolutely my happy place. It's an old railway line. Used to be able to get the train from Paddington to Padstow, pretty much. You had to change your Wadebridge, but you used to be able to get a train away. So there's a paved old train line with no traffic on it, just for cyclists and walkers. And it goes from Bodmin to the Atlantic Ocean, and like next stop, the United States. And it's absolutely my happy place. And in fact, there's lots of wild apple trees along the trail there. It's about 10 meters wide. It's serene, as I say. There's an estuary there. There's wonderful wildlife. And over the years, and this is a gospel truth, I've done so much of my work there. I actually modeled. I probably had done more work on that trail than I have at my desk. You know, on my bike, I have a notepad with me, or in more recent years, when I've used technology, like there's a dictation. That was many dictations called Otter, and I'd actually dictate to it while I was out on the bike, like emails I've got to send, or posts for LinkedIn I've got to write, or content for workshops and courses. Then when I get back home, it's all there on the screen, transcribed for me, ready to go. So yeah, my happy place, without doubt, is the Camel Trail.
Both of those answers, may I say, were delicious. When were you last floating on your back in the Atlantic?
Oh, well, funny, I'm getting that age where I've spent more time rehabbing from knee surgery than in the water, and hernia operations and all that sort of overuse injuries and bits and pieces that, you know, as you get older. Nothing major, everything routine. So I haven't been in the water for weeks. Well, actually months, actually. Probably back end of late autumn last year. But I was on my bike yesterday, and I was on my bike the day before, and I was on the bike the day before that. You know, come rain or shine, I'm always trying to find time to be on my bike if I can, unless I'm traveling. And
if I may ask, next time you are floating on your back, think about this moment in this clearing, because I love what you've just positioned for us. It's beautiful storytelling. And I myself was on the Camel Trail just a few months ago after my son had finished his A-levels, and I went up, down, up, down, up, down. The weather was appalling, but it was just beautiful.
Isn't it? It's so tranquil, even if the weather's appalling. I mean, it's just, you know, you go through quarries, there's I don't know if the coffee shop was open halfway down the quarry for you, and at either end, you know, whether you're in the Padstow, you can get some great fish and chips. It's just classic English, locked in a time capsule thing, you know. I mean, it's a million miles from AI. That's one of the things I love about it.
Ooh, what a great answer of itself. A million miles from AI. Just let that float there.
Yeah.
And now, as you beautifully already positioned, I'm going to arrive with a tree in your clearing now, which could be the log floating alongside you in the Atlantic. But on the Camel Trail, I'm now going to arrive with a tree, and then I'm going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. Yeah. How do you like these apples?
Yeah.
And this is where you've been kind enough to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. And when we get there, I'll talk about squirrels. You know, what are your 2 monsters of distraction? 2 things that never fail to distract you. And then the one, Mike Coulter, is a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. It's not a memory test, just to reassure the audience, and Mike knows particularly. So over to you to interpret the shaking of the canopy of your tree as you see fit.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the 4 things that shaped me. And I have to start, as many people I'm sure have before would do, with my parents, and particularly my dad. I grew up in a very amazing, loving home. As I say, I grew up in Yorkshire, although my dad was a Scouser, and my mum was from Sunderland, so she was not exactly a Geordie. I think they call Mackham if you're from Sunderland. So mum's from Sunderland, and it was at a time when, I guess, it was after the Second World War. Before they had me, I was born in the 50s, but there wasn't so much work in Liverpool or in the northeast, and the textile factories in Halifax were recruiting from all over the place. So mum and dad met, and dad had been in the army, met there. And I'll concentrate on my dad because the particular story I want to tell about my dad that I think absolutely shaped me. So I'm 15, 16 or whatever. I was lucky enough to, I don't even have the 11 plus. I probably had the 11 plus for 20 years, but I passed my 11 plus and went to a grammar school, which is unusual for people in my family. I wasn't very academic at all, but I did okay at school, but more in sports and stuff like that than the more academic stuff. But you know, when you're at school and you start talking to the careers advisor about what you're going to do when you leave. And I kind of knew I wasn't going to go to university. Just didn't speak to me. We didn't have the money anyway. But I had the conversation with my dad about being what I was going to do for a job. And bear in my mind, I was very poor at all the classic standard academic pastimes or teachings. But my dad was really insistent that I go and work in a bank. I was awful at maths. I just hated it, and I was terrible at it. And my dad knew that, but it didn't bother him. He said, "No, I think you should go and work in a bank." And here's what there's sort of an inkling that my dad was, as I say, Scouser, funny man. He loved sport. He's a very kind man. I knew he loved me, although he never said it, but he didn't do that sort of thing. And he said, "Yeah." Again, I said, "Dad, you know, and I know I'm rubbish at maths." Why? He said, "Yeah, no." He says, "Don't worry about it." I said, "Why?" He said, "Listen, banks at that time, all over the UK, I think, certainly in England, I think, banks used to close on Wednesday afternoons. You only worked a half day on Wednesday. But banks in Halifax and other cities in the towns around, certainly around Yorkshire, but in Halifax, maybe there were 14, 50, I don't know how many banks, there were double figures banks. They all had a football team. And there's a football league just for the banks played each other every Wednesday afternoon at football. My dad couldn't believe there was a job where you were paid to play football every Wednesday afternoon. So I sort of picked the bones out. I unpacked it, what he meant was, and what he really meant was get a job where you can bunk off and play football on a Wednesday afternoon and get paid for it. So I didn't get a job in a bank. And my first job, like most people, my first 1 or 2 jobs weren't where I landed, where my path took me.
Yes.
But I knew I wanted something that would shape me as a working class kid in a way that. Another thing my dad said was, and you'll have heard this before. Always get a job, and this also supports his theory why I should join a bank because I could play football. Always get a job where at the end of the week you think you should have paid them for the week. So that is without doubt the most fundamental life-shaping thing that happened to me, the earliest thing I can remember, because it's what led me ultimately to have a fairly long and reasonably successful but very satisfying career in advertising. Advertising, particularly if you work in a creative department, you are literally paid to daydream, paid to play. You can can I say arse about on the show? You can arse about and get paid for it. In
Yeah.
fact, when I worked for a really well-respected, getting back to my ideas on the camel trail on the bike, most of my ideas come somewhere other than I still work hard at desk. I know about deep work and cranking stuff out, but a lot of my stuff, a lot of my creative ideas don't come sat at a desk. They come out and about, and hence the camel trail thing. But years later, I was working in an advertising agency in Edinburgh, and no one could ever find me at my desk there, because I'd just go wandering around Edinburgh with the brief and try to come back with the idea. And it got to the stage where in reception, one of the creative directors, as a bit of a joke, mounted an A1 or A0 map of Edinburgh City and put it in reception with map pins with sightings of Mike. Has Mike been sighted anyway? And you could see where Mike had been sighted all that week. So that was my first thing that really shaking the tree. The first thing that really shook me was my dad and his encouragement to get a job that you loved, where you think that you should be paid them, and you could, not be watching the clock or the check in and check out and things like that. And as a consequence of that, I've never really worked 9 to 5. I've always had this kind of career where I know this sounds a bit dangerous in terms of burnout, in terms of the pressure and the stress that we can all be under in our jobs. But I've never made a massive distinction between how I earn my living and other areas of my life. That said, I do have a motto, and I did expect from me, it's to do with advertising and slogans. I don't know if you remember, Chris, years ago, the confectionery bar, which is still going, Mars Bars, had a slogan, and the slogan was, and I think it's the first advertising slogan I can remember, actually. The slogan was, "A Mars a day helps you work, rest, and play." And I think that's the most wonderful motto or Venn diagram for life, that balance of work, rest, play. Advertising, I used to do all of those at the same time. I'd be working on something, but I'd be really chilled about it. And it was a playful way to earn a living.
Great stuff. Yes.
So that led me to the second shake of the tree thing that shaped me, which is advertising, which I can unpack if you wish. I can go straight into it if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So where I landed, not getting a job at the bank as a teenager, where did I go when I left school? Well, I got a job, quite fundamental to me, working for a local newspaper. And I went in 17, wet behind the ears, total trainee. But the joy of it was, I was there about 3 years, I think. The joy of it was I'd work in every single department there. I'd work everything from one of the jobs I loved, and I did this for free. I didn't actually get paid. I was paid to work for the newspaper. But on a Saturday night at like 20 to 5, the sports department was absolutely packed because they had what was called the Green Final, as well as a daily newspaper, evening newspaper, the Halifax Evening Courier coming out. Every Saturday night, they would publish what was called the Green Final, which was a sports paper, all the horse racing results from over Britain, all the football results, local Halifax Town report. And it was amazing because at 20 to 5, when the final whistle went to the football, it all kicked off, and everyone had to file their copy and sign up. And then it had to be set in hot metal. Then it had to be printed.
Yeah.
And my job, or I worked with the guy who did the job, of when the bundles of green finals came off, they were thrown in the back of a van, the courier delivery van. And we used to go around all the newsagents that stayed open late around Halifax, and all the pubs. Pubs used to take bundles of newspapers, because a lot of people used to like a pint and read the sports paper at, whenever the papers got there, 6:30 in the evening.
I can smell the print. I can feel
exactly.
The print,
it was
the print.
Magic.
Hot plates as well. Hot plates of printing.
Love but the day job was I'd spend a few weeks working in the photography retouching department where all the photographs were retouched, or I'd spend some time working in the newsroom, or I'd spend some time working in telesales with the telesales girls and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I learned everything about newspapers, and the two things that stick with me. One is the newspaper do what were called advertising features, and it'd be really, really kind of low stakes stuff. Like a new pub would be refurbished, And so the people at the paper say, we can make a lot of money on advertising revenue here. How? Okay, well, we'll write an article about the pub, and then we'll put ads all around the article in a full page, and we'll sell an ad to the people who did the plumbing at the pub. We'll sell an ad to the people who did the carpets and the curtains at the pub. We'll sell an ad to the people who did the security at the pub, you know. And then it was, right, who's going to write the copy for it? Mike, you're going to write the copy for this pub. So go to the pub, speak to the landlord, find the history, why did he do it, have a drink while you're there, which was great. Then get the list of all the suppliers, then hit the phones and learn how to sell. Learn how to sell someone. And the only line was that, you know, Mike Coulter from the Halifax Evening Courier, we do an advertising feature on the Golden Lion that you did the plumbing at, or you did the carpets for. And the brewery are really pleased with your work, and I would say something like, and the brewery, I'm sure you'd like to support them by taking an ad. The implication being, if you don't take an ad, you won't get the carpet or the curtains or the plumbing job, the next pub that's refurbished. You know, so right. This kind of advertising pressure sales and all that. Anyhow, so I did all that, and
I'm loving the human Mars bar through line. This is work and play. And
work and play. Yeah.
You were brilliant to have around. You can tell because you were engaged, you were interested, you were just good to have around, and you wanted to get stuck in with you.
I wanted to do it. Yeah, that's the thing I learned from one of the most important things I learned from BJ Fogg. For any of us to do anything, if there is already intrinsic motivation within you to do the thing, it's much more likely to happen. So if somebody said to me, Mike, there's some amazing research has come out. If you eat chocolate every day, you'll lose half a stone and you'll be as strong as an ox, or whatever it is, you know. I wouldn't need any motivation to eat that chocolate. But if someone said, Mike, some new research out said, if you eat a pound of raw broccoli every day, you'll be as strong as an ox and you'll lose, right? That's never going to happen with me. It's never going to happen because I'm not motivated to do the thing. And you look at most successful Silicon Valley products and services and apps on the phone, they target people who already want to do the thing.
Yes.
Kids already want to keep in touch with other kids on the phone.
Yeah.
Business people already want to scope out what other competitors or what potential employees or what their own company is saying on LinkedIn or whatever. They already want to do the thing.
Yes.
And I'll maybe talk a little bit more about that later. But just let me get back to the Courier. So I'll just wrap on the shaking the tree at the Courier and what shaped me. So I'd been at the Courier 2 or 3 years, and then I used to see people my age, guys and girls, every Thursday. I'd see 4 or 5 of them come into reception at the newspaper, and they all had big brown paper parcels under their arms. And they were really cool, these kids. And I thought, oh, I like the look of them. She looks nice. He looks really smart. He looks clever, stuff like that. And then I'd see them in town in the trendy bars or clubs and stuff like that on a Saturday night. And they all had plenty of cash. And all the guys seem to be driving Capris and all that. And they're all dressed like they should be in, you know, fashion magazine. And I say to the receptionist, say, these people who come, these kids like me with these big who are they? She said, they work for a thing called advertising agencies. There's actually a thing called advertising agencies where products like, you know, department stores and car companies pay advertising agencies to have these creative ideas, like you have when you're selling your little crappy pub refurbishment ads. But they do these big campaigns, and they're just bringing the artwork in for the full page ads for the car dealership or the department store or whatever and things like that. I thought, oh God, what? I thought newspapers did all that. No, there are specialist people that do advertising. And that was it. I was off to the races, and then I just wanted a job I want to leave the newspaper and get a job in advertising. It took me, I actually couldn't get a job. I couldn't get a job in advertising from the get-go. But what I did do was for 2 years, it wasn't about 18 months. But for 2 winters, I used to take my winter week off the newspaper holiday and go work for free in advertising agencies in, you know, big town Leeds and all that, because I just wanted it so much.
Yes.
So that was the second thing that really shaped me, was being lucky enough to get a job in the newspaper, understanding that there's this thing called advertising and saying that's got to be the path for my life.
Boom. I love how you're shaping this, and you're following the structure to the letter beautifully, as if you've put it in print and it's there in the Racing Post. Now the third shapeage, please.
Okay, the third and the fourth are the same source. So, this is a massive fast forward in terms of the newspaper. So Dad inadvertently pushed me towards a job that ultimately was working in a newspaper, and the newspaper sort of advertently pushed me into working in advertising. And then that was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 decades, relatively successful advertising. Worked in Germany, worked in Amsterdam, worked in New Zealand. Most of the work was in London, in advertising agencies in London, and in Scotland at one of the great agencies that should have been in London called the Leith Agency. Anyhow, so this is a massive fast forward to 2015, 16. Massive fast forward. This is, 25 years, 30 years. And I worked for the Do Lectures then. Started working for the Do Lectures in 2015, 16. And I write a thing called the Side Project Report, which is about the power of side project we touched on. And one of the things I write about in the Side Project, I do a chapter on what's called behavior design. I'd been aware for a year, I'd probably been aware for about 2 or 3 years, about a professor at Stanford University called B.J. Fogg, who'd been one of the most influential voices in Silicon Valley in the early days of PayPal and LinkedIn and Facebook and Apple, when kind of, I suppose when social media kicked in 2007, B.J. Fogg was active at Stanford University. And he'd been very influential in the early days, not so much in more recent years, because he feels quite rightly that Silicon Valley and a lot of the apps have become very dangerous in terms of mental health, in terms of the way that they hijack so much of all our time, not just kids, but kids, maybe they've got a bit more, maybe they're a bit more malleable in terms of the
parallel. In Frankenstein, we have created a monster, and you're reporting on BJ.
Exactly that. Exactly. It's exactly that. Yeah. So yeah, and the unpleasant addictive qualities, let's say, that we've all experienced by going down those rabbit holes and still do. And so BJ, his work these days is not to work with Silicon Valley, but actually to be the antidote to Silicon Valley. So the two things that point 3 and 4 that shaped me were both came from B.J. Fogg, and the first one was he himself tried to do a startup in about 2010, and I won't say it nearly broke him, but it caused him a lot of stress and a lot of problems and things like that, and not a lot, but some behavioural issues he wasn't too crazy about. And he thought, this is madness. He's saying, I'm one of the world experts in how human behavior works, the psychology of influencing human behavior, which, as I say, been doing in Silicon Valley. Yet I'm allowing these maladaptive and unhelpful habits to not just creep into my life, but affect me in terms of, I'm not dealing with stress as well as I should, or, I've got some really maladaptive coping mechanisms. Surely, if anybody can figure out a way or a methodology or a set of models and methods to build strong, robust, positive habits in their life, it's me. So he went back to the drawing board, and originally just for himself, he designed this method that became known as the Tiny Habits method.
Yes.
Built on his decades of research about how to influence human behavior. And lo and behold, if it didn't have a wonderful, positive outcome for him, and he got himself back on track. So, buoyed by this, he shared it with friends and family. Then he started sharing it with his students. He had a thing called the Behavior Design Lab at Stanford. He started sharing it with his students. And lo and behold, lots and lots of people around him, not least himself, are living happier, healthier, more fulfilled lives based on this model, which he called the Tiny Habits method.
Yes.
So I'm writing this report for the Do Lectures, and I kind of knew about the Tiny Habits method, but I'd never take it seriously. So I'm writing about BJ and Tiny Habits, and I think, right, you know what? I've got this brief to write this side project report, and it's come at a time in my life when I actually needed the money. I needed the work. The brief was fantastic. David Hieatt wrote the brief. It's a fantastic brief. I really wanted to do the brief, and it was, working with the Do lectures.
And how did you meet David to even get alongside him in that way?
That's a slightly longer story. It's a relatively interesting story. Rather than break the flow here, Chris, I will come back to that if we time it. I'll tell you how do I make David Hieatt, because I think that's instructive in itself. But thank you for flagging that. So, so I got this brief on, but here's the thing. To actually really do a great job on it, I had to be on my A game. And at that time in my life, I wasn't even on my F game. It was everything I wanted, and it came at the worst possible time. Usual stuff. I was stressed out. I was drinking too much. I wasn't getting on with the missus. All that's human stuff that comes at the wrong time when you least need it was there. And the paradox is, I'm writing about this guy, BJ Fogg. It happened to him, a few years before. He did this time. I'm writing about that. So I thought, I need to take this tiny habits thing seriously. So I'm writing the side project report, and I rename it in my head. Mike, you're going to do the side project. And that is, learn tiny habits, take it really seriously, and apply it to this project. And I did that. And stone me if it worked in a really short period of time. So I got so blown away by this. We knocked the project out of the park, which was fantastic. But B, more importantly, this is the tree shaking bit. This is what shaped me bit is, I thought I need to know more about this. I've just discovered the superpower. I need to know more about this. So I looked into it. Are there any workshops in the UK? Can I find any tiny habits coaches in the UK? Nothing. Crickets. All I could find was that BJ and his sister ran this thing called the Tiny Habits Academy, where you could pay pretty eye-watering amount of money for me at that time to train over about 8 weeks over Zoom to qualify as a coach. Now, I didn't want to be a coach. I wasn't interested in coaching it, but I wanted the information for my own personal application. So I bit the bullet and I paid it. And because it was in California and it was done over Zoom, well, actually, I think it was done over Skype in those days. It was 4 p.m. Class started every Tuesday, but 4 p.m. California time. So I started class at midnight every Tuesday night. So again, it was another indication about my level of motivation to do the thing. I wasn't being externally motivated. I wanted this thing.
Yes.
So that's what I did. So I trained in that, and I qualified as a tiny habits coach. And and to this day, it's amazing. And funnily enough, I did then over time, because I thought, well, just don't keep it to yourself. I did and still do occasionally teach it primarily to creatives like me and say, I was stuck. This is what I did. It might help you. Do you want to hear about it?
Yes.
So that was that. Then just finally on the 4 tree shakes, BJ was instrumental in the 4th one in a real simple way, but very profound way for me, which went back to his roots about even pre-tiny habits, when his models and methods of understanding human behavior. I realized, and this is only in 2019, so I've had 3 decades of being relatively successful in advertising. And advertising is about influencing, consumer behavior. And in 3 decades of doing it, I'd kind of been making it up as I went on. I'd never been formally trained and qualified and take qualifications in psychology. So I asked BJ Fogg, would he train me? Again, we did it over Zoom primarily, but then I went to California and did a thing called boot camp with him and qualified in what's called behavior design, which is how do you use it in the day job?
Yes.
How do you use it to get customers? How do you use it to write your website? How do you use it to choose your pricing? How do you use it to decide what your content's going to be in your workshops and courses and things like that? And it changed everything for me. And I use it so I ever use it every single day in like tiny habit stuff. If I'm working with stuff like, exercise. For example, when I had knee surgery, I'm convinced if I hadn't learned tiny habits, my rehab wouldn't have been as so quick and phenomenally successful. I realized someone that had been absolutely useless at getting myself to do stuff, one of the world's great procrastinators, to do a 180 and almost like, if I decide to do it, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to use the model and method of tiny habits, And I'm pretty confident I'll be able to nail that really quickly.
And the science of motivation, I've just heard this, you're knee deep in motivation, which is
already, yeah. Most people, I mean, and this is it. That's a really interesting point, actually, Chris, because when I've been working in advertising years before, when I've been working on health campaigns for like, when I was working in Scotland, I was working for what's called the Health Education Board for Scotland, and their job was to enhance the health of the millions of Scots that were drinking or not eating enough vegetables, or not exercising.
Also the Scottish stereotypical irony of deep fried Mars bars.
Exactly.
In your Mars a day, work, rest, and play.
Exactly. But yeah, in my, a lot of the solutions I came up with in those days, which were baked into the brief. I hadn't even written a brief. But one of the earliest things you've seen in the brief was, how can we motivate people to drink less, to eat 5 fruit and veg a day, to exercise? All about motivating them and things like that. And I realized years later with BJ Fogg that actually there are millions of people already motivated to do the thing you want them to do. And that's who you need to find first, that low-hanging fruit. And if you work with them, then you can get to the harder and harder populations and audiences.
There's a delicious irony in the name fog as well, because this is about clearing the fog.
Absolutely, and helping I'm sure BJ would be the first to maybe that's been some kind of deep unconscious driver about his name, because he's all about clarity. Exactly, it's all about clarity and simplicity and making stuff easier to do. And you don't need to look very far, but for example, when Google launched, Google now have got 30, 40 different products, Gmail, self-driving cars, YouTube, spreadsheets, loads of different products. When they started, their first product was a single page on the internet, a search engine. That's all they started with. But here's the thing. When they started, there were already 17 search engines doing perfectly well on the internet. Inktomi, Yahoo, Ask Jeeves. There were loads of different search engines. And what Google genius was, they realized, well, hang on a minute. If millions of people already want to search, and we've got a better product that makes it easier to do and they get better results, we don't need to go out saying, hey, we've got a great idea. Why don't you search for things on the internet using our search? No. People already want to do it. So just say, hey, to that audience that's already motivated, say, we've got a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
Airbnb didn't invent bed and breakfast staying in a stranger's house. They didn't have to motivate people saying, we want to motivate you to stay in a stranger's house in a strange city that you haven't been before. They just made it easier to do. The app and the interface, it looks so, the rooms look beautifully clean. The hosts look so they weren't like serial killers. Same with Uber. Taxis have been around forever. Yeah. Millions of people already wanted to get from A to B, so they didn't need motivating. They needed to see a little diagram of the taxi coming to pick them up so they could get a swift half in the bar before the taxi gets there. Or they didn't have to give any money to the taxi driver because it was all baked into the app. Yeah. And that was just like the bang moment for me.
Yes.
It's not about motivation. Find people who already want to do it and just let them know that you offer an easier, better solution to what they've been using.
And winding you forward, there's a very exciting moment at the end called show us your QR code, please. And I know that you've put all your wisdom into habitualize.com.
Habitualize.com. Yeah, that's me.
I'm going to flag that up. And that's where you now apply your your tiny habits, basically.
It's one of the places people can find me. But I suppose I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say to people, just type Mike Coulter into Google and see what it shows you. It will show you a famous American actor if you get the spelling wrong, but if you spell it Coulter, you'll invariably find me.
Wonderful. We're now on, having done the 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, Mike Coulter.
Okay. This could be. I hesitated to include this, but my bike inspires me. And do you know what? I mean, I remember being really, actually, it was when I was working on the side project report and I was still sort of figuring out the tiny habit stuff and BJ and stuff like that. And I wanted to build more exercise into my day and things like that. And it was the light nights had come. And there was one time I had a particularly tough day and it's about 6 o'clock. maybe a bit at 5:30. And I thought, and I cook dinner pretty much most days in our house. My wife goes out to work, and I cook dinner pretty much most days. But like we don't eat till late. We don't eat till about 8 or something like that. And I just decided, you know what? I just fancy an ice cold glass of lager now. I'm just going to chill out for 20 minutes, half an hour of a lager. And I went to the fridge. I go to the fridge, and I look outside at the shed, and I think, the bike's in the shed. Put the beer back, got on the bike. And then I designed a tiny habit. After you finish work, get your bike out of the shed and put it somewhere where you can see it. Because it became this visual prompt, this inspiration of saying, look, you've got this great bike, you've got great places, you've promised yourself you're going to change, get on the bike. You can have the beer when you get back if you want while you're cooking, that's fine, but get on the bike. And so the bike totally inspired me. Now this bike, it's 20 years old. I bought it in Edinburgh 20 years ago, and I bought it secondhand then. So it's not even 20 years, it's probably 25 years old. It's fairly new when I got it.
Please send a picture of your bike at the end. This is so beautiful because I say often my bike is my freedom. This is totally relatable.
Oh, that's great. In fact, you know, funny enough, when I proposed to my wife about 30 years ago, I've been at bikes forever. Instead of buying an engagement ring, I actually bought her a mountain bike.
Oh, perfect.
Call me romantic. I mean, Mr. Romantic or whatever. But yeah, so bikes have always been part of my life, and always inspired me. As a younger man, I used to do endurance sports, and I mean, like crazy distances on bikes and that. And so yes, I've always been inspired by bikes because it's so simple as well. And again, I love how it comes back to tech. And you know, didn't Steve Jobs once say that a computer, when he's talking about early days of Apple, a computer is a bicycle for the mind? It's great. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So so I'm totally inspired by bikes.
Great answer. Love that. Please, as I say, just to reincorporate, please do send a picture of your bike. I love
absolutely.
Second thing that inspired, yes.
Yeah, this should have come first, actually. My wife totally inspires me. So she was, when I met her, she was a typographer in an advertising agency. But this was pre-Mac. This was when you sent type out to be set, and it came back as a sheet with type on, and then finished artists would cut it out and cow gum it down into that. So as I told you, when we got married, I mean, she's Lancashire, and I'm Yorkshire, but she really does inspire me. And I'm just wondering when I'm going to be jumping the gun here. Just let me look at my notes for 1 second. Yeah, so we tried to live in Cornwall about 30 years ago, and we couldn't make it work financially. This was like was it 30 years ago? Yeah, it was about late 90s, just when the internet was starting. And I actually thought the internet was going to be a big deal. I was just an advertising copywriter then, but I saw the internet thing. I think this is going to shake up advertising. And in fact, in 1997, and I only sold it a couple of years ago, I registered a domain in 1997, which was digitalagency.com. I thought it was going to be a thing called digital agencies. And I thought, actually, even if I don't use it, people will want this domain, I'll make a fortune. I didn't make a fortune. I sold it very cheaply a couple of years ago. But in those days, like, you had to get on the internet. So we were living in this small town in Cornwall. Padstow, actually. We were living in Padstow. You had to get in touch with BT, and they had to connect you by an ISDN line actually to the big grey junction box in a thing. You know, it wasn't just like plugging your phone thing into a modem and everything. And it cost about $2,000 to get set up. And if you want to get a printer from Apple, that was $2,000. Everything was $2,000 for some reason. And I was going to set up like this internet business, and it just totally failed. So we ran out of money, and we were struggling. So my wife knew two people from Edinburgh who came down to talk to her and said, we want to start a design and actually what ended up as a digital company in Edinburgh. Will you come back? And it was great. It was a lifesaver for us. So we went back to Edinburgh, and there were 3 of them started this agency, and they were smart. They had pals in an advertising agency, and they said, why don't you have a studio in your agency, which will be more attractive to clients, and it'd be more cost effective for you because you won't be sending it out to studios and stuff like that. So it's a really good business move. And my wife was part and parcel of all that. And she's always had a much better business brain for me. So she did that. So she started this business. And I didn't see much of her in the first few years because she was always working, but they grew it to 80 people. It went phenomenally well.
Wow.
But the thing I admire about her, and she inspires me, is that when she goes for something, she absolutely goes for it.
Yeah.
And even down to when it's run its course, I won't say she's ruthless, but she's practical and pragmatic. Because bear in mind, she loves design and she loves typography and things like that. But once she was running a business of 80 people, it was more about arguing with the council about business rates every day.
Yes.
Or relationship issues with staff and things like that, or whether the loos were working, or whether all the stuff other than what she loved about why she got in the business.
Yes.
So she did a really smart thing, and she gave herself Fridays off. And every Friday she went and worked for nothing for a year, for free, as I say, for the best picture framer in town. She wanted to be a picture framer, and she just totally retrained, did it for nothing. 52 weeks a year, she worked every Friday to be a picture framer. And then when we moved back to Cornwall this last time, she got a picture framing business and it was on an industrial estate, her workshop. But still, me, she didn't do the same thing again. She, just as the then negotiation with an advertising agency said, why don't you have an art studio in your agency? She thought, if that trick worked there, let's try it again. So she went to her workshop was like 30 minutes away. It's a bit of a drag to get to over in Bodmin from where we live. But 5 minutes from us, as it's amazing. I mean, if you're in California, you wouldn't be surprised. There's this amazing contemporary art gallery. And like cool restaurants have an open kitchen. Mm-hmm. She said to this contemporary art guy, because she knew there's extra space at the guy, she says, why do you have a picture framers inside your art gallery? And they said, oh, that's a cool idea. We'd love that. But what was brilliant about it in terms of business is everybody who comes to look at art in an art gallery tends to like art and have something to frame.
Yes.
And the art gallery, who's supporting all these artists, needs to get the artist's work framed. So it was just a brilliant bit of business from her, but it wasn't done commercially. She just thought it was a really cool idea.
She just arrived knowing the solution to a pain they didn't know they had.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And it's worked really well. And she still does that. So
what I'm picking up on now is framing your career with a picture of a Mars bar. It's the whole thing. So yes, we could now be. I think that's the things that inspire you. Correct? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, we've done 2 actually. I think that was it 3 on the list for inspiring.
You can have 3. So inspiration number 3.
Okay. Let me just have a look at my notes. Okay.
And I'm really enjoying the depth at which you've given this thought, Mike. This is very lovely. And
that's fine. Okay, the final thing that's inspired. Take 2. So my wife's inspired me, and my bike inspires me. And the third thing I would say that inspired me, and it still inspires me. I'll tell you what. I've been really lucky my whole career that I've worked either with brilliant art director. Typically, for any listeners or viewers, not totally conversant, usually work in a team in an advertising agency, a copywriter and an art director. Like me and you would be like a copywriter and art director now. And I've been really lucky. I've worked with some brilliant art directors who actually are really good at writing and have made me good. One of the best things that anybody can do, whether you're an art director or a creative director, a copywriter or art director, is this. The person I think that gives the most value in a creative team isn't always the person that has the idea. It's because you have dozens of ideas. It's the person who says, nah, that's the one. That's awesome. Go with that. And of course, the ultimate role of that is a creative director. So I always have some great creative directors. And there was one particular creative director, David Hieatt's my creative director, and he totally inspires me. But years ago, and this was good psych.
And I know you, David Hieatt, just planting that because that's someone you're very collaboratively connected to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
We work very closely together, but he's very special. He's an utterly brilliant writer, very, very inspiring writer. So I did this creative director years ago in London. I worked at an age called Corner Collis Curvin. And in those days, it was here's how advertising's changed from those days. These days, most advertising agencies now are owned by these massive global entities or PLCs. In the heyday of advertising, it literally had the name of the people over the door who were producing the work. You had the creative director, the head of strategy, and the account director, or whatever. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's not as such a happy. Not advertising aren't such happy.
It's the tragedy of the economy of scale going wrong. Whereas
exactly,
Coulter and Hieatt, or Hieatt and Coulter, it's over the door of the do.
Exactly. So I've been looking at creative directors, but I just want to bring in a quick psychology story about what inspired me. So one of the reasons you'd go to an advertising agency would be the caliber of the people whose name was over there. You wanted to work with them. It's a bit like going to a football club where they've got a star striker or a star manager or something like that. So anyhow, so I had this creative director called Graham Collis, and how it worked was when you get a brief for an ad, and you'd write the copy, you'd write the copy, and then a production person would take your copy there'd be a stamp on the back, literally a stamp on the back of the A4 paper that copy was printed on, and it got the strategy director who wrote the brief, and he'd read it to see if it met the brief, and the account director who'd have to sort it, and they'd have to literally sign off, and the final sign off came from the creative director. And one day, a production guy came in, Coulter and I done the rounds to get the sign-offs for my copy, and the production guy came in and said, "Hey, Mike, you might want to see this." I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, has Graham changed my copy?" He said, No, he loves it." He said, "Look at this." And he signed it on the back with his name, and everybody else, all his partners could see this when they saw it. And it said, he just put in brackets, obviously, "I wish I'd written this." This guy was one of the greatest copywriters on the planet. And he said, "I wish I'd written this." Yes. I would have walked through hot coals for that guy ever since, from then on, and did. And my work improved, and I got put on better and better accounts.
Yes.
So that was like a soft skill in the sense of, that was motivation, but I didn't need it because I was motivated anyway.
Yeah.
But an even softer one, but I think more instructive one was this. So one day, this same creative director calls me in, and he said that, "Mike, we're putting on a new account." I said, "Okay, what am I working on?" He said, "We've just won the Odd Bins account."
The off license, I remember.
Yeah, off license chain. Yes. Okay. I said, "Oh," he said, "Do you fancy it?" I said, "I really do fancy it." Yeah. I said, "I think it's a great brand. I've used them myself. I think they're really great and things like that." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, You live out in Oxfordshire, don't you?" I used to get the training from Didcot every day to Paddington. I did 200-year-old thatched cottage up in the, whatever. And he said, "You get a train from Paddington, don't you? You get trained in Paddington." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, there's an Odd Bins opposite St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington." "Oh, yeah. And, well, we've set up an account for you there." "So why is that?" He said, "Well, every Friday you can finish work whatever time you want Friday afternoon." Remember my dad, football?
Yes, absolutely.
Every Friday you can take Friday afternoon off, but go and hang out at the Odd Bins in St. Mary's near Paddington. Get to know the manager, speak to the customers, ask him what's selling, what isn't selling, what's he doing, and all that. Then get anything you want. Why, if you want to do an ad on champagne, fine. If you want to do it on Australian beers, fine. If you don't, whatever you want, we don't care. Just but sound out the manager for what the vibe is at the moment in the industry.
And was this a flagship store, which is why this was the one?
No, it's just a regular. No, the flagship store was somewhere like in Farringdon, which was a big old vaulted place, and they were because Odd Bins originally, before they were bought by Seagram's and became a bit like advertising agencies bought by a multinational.
Yeah,
Odd Bins was a very smallish opera. They literally bought odd bin ends of wine. If there were 15 cases left in some vineyard in France, they'd have those 15 cases, or 100 cases from some Californian winery or whatever. It literally was. When it was gone, it was gone.
Yeah.
And that's what made it kind of really unique and different. It wasn't like a never-ending same brand bottle. So Yeah, and that was the deal. He said, look, go and chat to the managers, get whatever you want, go home that weekend, drink it. He said, the deal is if you come back with award-winning advertising on Mondays, every Monday, I'll sign off your drinks bill. So for 2 years, I drank for free and won advertising awards for the work I was doing. So if that wasn't inspirational, I don't know what is.
That is just great.
Crazy, isn't it?
Which brings us beautifully to the end of the 3 things that inspire you. And now this is the 2 squirrels. What are your 2 monsters of distraction? What 2 things?
Oh, God. Yeah, I might need a bit of help. We might have to wing it. Just a slight conversation here. I would think that you mentioned about the manifesto. Well, the bikes thing is I cannot go past a bike shop without going in it. Honestly, I can't.
Great answer.
Yeah, I'll look at it. So yeah, there is no. That's actually not true. There's no bike shop on the planet. There's plenty of bike shops. I've got a nose for bike shops.
Yeah,
I know a good one from a bad one. So yeah, bike shops is just my squirrel moment. I'm just gone.
A great squirrel. We don't need to unpack that anymore. Right. I love it. Second squirrel.
I cannot walk past a manifesto without reading it. I love manifestos. And I mean, I've got a very broad definition of manifestos from this point of view, like just do it from Nike. That's a manifesto.
Yes.
And, I just get mesmerized by them and the backstory, I mean, just do it was the last words of a serial killer who was going to electric chair. There was nothing to do with think different from Apple. So you can have a 2-word manifesto, or a book can be a manifesto. David Hieatt wrote Do Purpose, which was like 250 pages, 200 pages or whatever.
Yes,
but it's a manifesto.
Yes,
and so a lot of books I read, I read them with a half a cocked eye of what's the manifesto? What's the manifesto here? Yeah, so that's my second thing is. So
it's a really attuned purpose. I know you know exactly what it is, but it sounds like it's a really attuned purpose imperative. What is this for?
Yeah, and of course there's a practical reason for it. I mean, for the last 2 years I've been training people how to write manifestos, so I'm always looking for new examples of it to freshen the thing up. And the last thing I would say is that half of the great ads that you'll see in the awards book, or half of the great ads that I love, are manifestos. They're why products exist, why you should consider buying this product, and what this product will do for your life.
Yes.
Which is pretty much a manifesto.
I would love to ask your help, advice, and opinion about legacy life reflections when this is done.
Yeah, sure.
And again, coming full circle to your own love of a Mars bar, work, rest, and play is a manifesto.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
And I'll just plant this idea. I'll mention this at the very end, but legacy life reflections is to record one's life story for posterity, but we'll come on to that in a second.
Yeah.
And now we're on to the one, which is a quirky or unusual fact about you, Mike Coulter, that we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
Okay, so for this, I'm going to take you back to my grammar school. And it's the 1960s, mid-1960s. So the Beatles are there and everything. And I'd have to Wikipedia this. I'm not sure when the Cold War ended. The Cold War, for our younger listeners or younger viewers, was... there was a time when we thought, and this is kind of, appropriate in the modern day. I mean, yesterday was 4 years of Russia declaring war on Ukraine.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, when I went to secondary school, there was still a chance that we thought the Russians might invade Europe, and we might have Russians in Yorkshire. So as I say, I went to a grammar school, and it was unusual in that, just like other schools, there was. All the usual subjects were taught, including languages, and languages, which most schools did, were French and German. Mm-hmm. Our school was unusual in that they'd managed to lure a teacher there. He's quite an aging teacher, but he was hugely respected. So there was a third language taught at the school I went to, which was Russian. And in West Riding, where I grew up, all the education departments were all left-leaning, slightly left-leaning in terms of their political kind of viewpoints and things like that. So one day at some council meeting or some education board meeting, someone said, can kind of float an impossible idea here. Yeah. What if Russia really did invade and there were troops in Yorkshire and they took over the running of Yorkshire or Halifax? Well, what's your point? Who speaks Russian? Oh, yeah. What shall we do? Well, there's that school in Halifax Technical High School. They're the only school that got a Russian class. Okay, what shall we do? Let's fast track the kids in that class to teaching Russian, increase the amount they taught. So we've got 30 kids that can speak Russian for when the Russians invade.
This is so beautiful. It's like Warmington on Sea in Dad's Army.
So I was one of the kids taught Russian. and so they increased the number of classes we had a week at school. And then on Wednesday afternoons, which was, thinking Wednesday afternoon was ultimately, am I going to play football on Wednesday afternoon? Well, that didn't transpire. But Wednesday afternoons, we were coached to Huddersfield, where there was a language lab where these big old open spool tape recorders, and you put headphones on, and were taught Russian by rote for 3 hours solid.
Fantastic.
It was awful. I hated it. I had no motivation. I didn't even want to be in the Russian class in the first place. But I was force-fed Russian. It's a bit like I said before. If I was force-fed broccoli, I will never, ever get into it. It was the same with the Russian. So I kind of refused to, no, speak to them. I just didn't want to know. So I was the worst Russian speaker in the Russian-speaking class.
In my whole circa 270 odd episodes, that's the first person's quirky or unusual fact. I'm the reluctant Russian student.
Yeah. So that was, so we were taught Russians as kids. We taught Russian as kids just in case the Ruskies invaded Halifax.
Perfect. We have shaken your tree, Mike Coulter. And now we stay in your clearing, which is on your back in the Atlantic, or of course on the Camel Trail. Now, next we talk about alchemy and gold, which is where your manifesto comes in, because this is your purpose imperative. So when you're at purpose and in flow, Mike Coulter, what are you absolutely happiest doing in what you're here to reveal to the world?
I think it's figuring out how to change my own behavior for the better. Or if asked, I never force it on people. If I'm ever asked for advice, sharing it with them. And just from the point, not by any stretch of the imagination, trying to give anybody approved advice. If anybody needs any help in terms of changing behavior, get professional training, either work with a approved therapist, speak to your GP, all that usual disclaimers that we have to put in. I'm not giving any advice, and I don't give that. I just say, here's what happened to me, and here's what I did, and here's why I found it useful. And it might be tiny habits or whatever. So for me, it's just sharing with people what I've tried and what's worked and what hasn't worked for me. And I want to make a distinction here that one of the most interesting things that I learned from BJ Fogg was that he talks about this concept called behavior matching. And a good behavior match is something a person wants to do. They're already motivated to do it. They can do, they've got the ability to do it. And it'll get them the results they want in a fairly quick bit of time. For example, really quick, 30 seconds. A few years ago, I had a few issues, sort of low mood. I wasn't too happy and things like that. And the missus had been talking to one of her friends. She said something like, oh, my husband was like your husband. He's great now. Oh, what did he do? Oh, we went to the village hall and went line dancing every Wednesday night or whatever. Okay, that's a real bad behavior match for me. Ability. Well, I was waiting for knee surgery. I could ride a bike, no problem, but I couldn't walk the dog. So I'm not going to go line dancing. Embarrassment. Yes. I'm not going to dance in front of anybody unless I'm at a wedding and I've had a couple of drinks. And my motivation to do it is really, really low. So it's not going to happen. So that was a really interesting aspect of it. So for me, so the thing is, it's sharing. In fact, I've got a newsletter, which is called Dog Fooders. And it's called Dog Fooders in the United States, again in the 60s. There was this company who wanted to get into dog food. And rather than sort of start manufacturing on their own, they bought just regular stewed steak that humans ate and just relabeled it. So it was human consumption grade steak. Yeah. And the trick that the sales reps did, we went to the pet shops was, this dog food's so good, you could eat it yourself. This is where dog fooding comes from.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
take a forkful. And so dog food really is about, so the manuals that dog food is about really about, it's a newsletter for people who will only give advice that they've already given themselves and taken themselves.
Yes.
And whether it worked for them or not. There's so many infos and experts now in social media or LinkedIn or whatever telling us all what to do. And half the time, my fear or my worry or my assumption is, have you done that yourself?
Yes.
You know, I think there's a little bit too much do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
And I think it should be do as I, if you want, try doing as I did, because this is what worked for me.
Yes.
Is a much more honest way of going about it. So yeah, so I think just sharing what's worked with what's worked. This has worked for me. It might work for you. It might not, but it might work for you. But this is genuine, field tested. Even though it's like N1, just one person's point of view. This kind of worked for me. So it might work for you, might not.
And just to reincorporate, I love the idea that you got your bike out the shed and put it in plain view, because that was a high motivation factor for you changing your habit.
It's also a trigger to do the behavior when you see it. You know, it works with anything. I mean, I started taking, I worked with a nutritionist and started taking only a few supplements that I needed to fill a few gaps in my nutrition.
Yeah.
And I nail that every single morning as I'm making a tea. I put them where I can see them, not even take them, put them where you can see them. You know, if I've got something to do, put it where you can see. And sometimes you can have it a color that you can see.
Yeah.
See it across the room. Make it easy to do. And seeing something that you're going to do and having it to hand. And there's a lot of evidence that actually designing your environment, we talked about our home studios before and things like designing your environment to make it easy to do, make it more easy. You're plopping a seat and you're often ready to go, not spending 20 minutes getting rid of making the bed or, you know, getting the light right or whatever.
Yes. And now I'm going to award you with a cake. Hurrah. So now this is where you get to put, first of all, do you like cake, Mike?
I love cake. Yes. Too much. Yes.
Cake of choice, please.
Christmas cake.
Oh, I say, lovely. You're the first guest who's ever said Christmas cake.
Boom. Oh, well, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. My mum, no longer with us, but my mum used to, wherever I've been living in the world, my mum always used to make me a Christmas cake and send it. And it was always in this almost bomb-proof tin, about 17, you know, layers of grease-proof paper, then tin foil, then in a tin with tape around. It used to take longer to get into the frigging tin to get to it. So my mum made one for me, and now my sister's taken over that mantle. But the reason Christmas cake is, and my sister's on my brief every year is extra cherries in the cake. You don't need a cherry on the top of Christmas cake. You've got dozens already in there.
Yes.
It's never enough anyway. Yeah.
Very happy you unpacked the bomb-proof Christmas cake as well. Now you get to put a cherry on the cake.
Yeah.
This is stuff like, what's a favorite inspirational quote that's always given you sucker and pulled you towards your future, Mike Coulter?
Okay. Just give you a couple, actually. I had to just make a note of it. There's an American choreographer called Twyla Tharp.
What a name, Twyla Tharp.
Yeah. She's in her 80s and she still goes to the gym at 6:30 every day.
Yeah.
And at the gym are founders of businesses, senior executives, bankers, and things like that. And she said, when she sees them, they're not merely getting in some exercise when they can. They're ambitious about taking control of their body. They're as ambitious about taking control of their body as they are about succeeding at work. Their body is like a second career. She says, like a pledge, devotion to your body requires daily renewal. That's one. So about making sure our tools are working okay for us to do stuff. And another's from a great meditation teacher that I buy into, and he just says, look, an anxious mind cannot exist in a relaxed body. I think it's a whole new take on the mind-body relationship.
Lovely. I'm just going to let that hang there. Lovely. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given by somebody else, Mike Coulter?
Say yes more often. There's a lot of talk about saying no, and I'd let me just literally unpack that in 20 seconds. saying no to things like people wanting your time. Will you come and do this? Will you come and do that? Will you write that? Will you that? Always interesting. Keep your antenna up. But we can't say yes to everything.
Yes.
But internal experiences. Oh, what's that funny pain in my tummy? Oh, I've got that pain in my neck. Oh, I feel a bit anxious. Oh, that's not great. Well, all these experiences we have in the body or the mind, so I'm talking about, I've had my run-ins with mental health and I'm in a good place now, but mental health and anxiety and panic disorders and stuff like that, which have been in a sense, paradoxically, a blessing. When they arrive and I struggle with them, I've found that they get worse. They're already here.
Yes.
But saying yes stops that struggle and helps promote getting untangled from it. And it's that old saying, isn't it, that if you say no to it, it makes it more like Velcro.
Yeah.
If you say yes to it, it makes it a little more like Teflon and actually leaves you a lot quicker. So that's my biggest, say yes to all internal experience. Because if it's an internal experience, it's arrived already. The genie's out of the bottle if it's there and you're feeling something.
Yeah.
So your response, the responsive yes, it's like, yes, now what? How can I work with this?
That's very relatable because of my passion and it working in the realm of comedy improvisation with its mindset of yes and.
Oh, of course.
Yes,
I hadn't thought of that. Of course. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Wonderful. So
that's a big improv thing. It's yes and.
Exactly. Yes, and as opposed to no but, and the qualitative derivation of both.
Beautiful.
We're ramping up now to talk about Shakespeare in a moment, to talk about legacy. But before we get there, this is the pass the golden baton moment, please. They don't like it up, Mr. Mannering. We've mentioned Dad's Army and Wilmington-on-Sea and Russia already. Yeah, but who, now you've experienced this from within, might you most like to pass the golden baton along to in order to keep the golden thread of the storytelling going, Mike?
There are three people. Can I have three people?
Yes.
Okay. I love that. One guy's a friend of mine up in Scotland, in Edinburgh, who used to be a scallop fisherman. He used to hand dive for scallops at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, God.
And before that, he wrote a book of his experience. He went and lived in Alaska in the wilds and built a log cabin, fending off bears. And before that, he trained with the French Foreign Legion. So there's a guy, he's called Guy Grieve. He's a miraculous, marvelous man.
Guy Grieve.
Guy Grieve, Grieve, Guy Grieve. And he belts out a lovely opera tune every now and then. So there's Guy Grieve. There would be, of course, David Hieatt, who is gold standard. And the last one I say is a pal of mine who's a professor of business, I think, at Chicago Booth University. He's a huge friend of the Do Lectures. And my mind's just gone totally blank. I might have to just edit this. And my third one is a professor, entrepreneur. I think he's a professor of entrepreneurial business at Chicago Booth University, and he's called Professor Greg Bunch. And he is the most wonderful, qualified, gifted, educated man I've ever known. He often uses poetry to unpack his thoughts. So Greg Bunch.
So I've got poetry, opera, and diving for scallops at 4 a.m. That's quite an elixir of awesomeness. Thank you very much. Love that.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And now, inspired by Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. How, when all is said and done, Mike Coulter, would you most like to be remembered?
I think it's just, I knew Mike, I liked Mike, I loved Mike.
Love that. And now, inspired, this is the very exciting moment called Show Us Your QR Code, please. And this is now going to so we're listening and watching and loving, but also Tiny Habits business class. What's the domain of where we can find out all about Mike Coulter on the internet?
Habitualize, Habit, habit, UALISE.com, habitualize.com.
And if you're watching, you can scan the QR code and boom, takes you straight there. How very, very exciting. Also, if you'd like to connect with Mike on LinkedIn, you can connect with Mike Coulter on LinkedIn. Look for him, obviously. Don't misspell it. Coulter. And you can scan this QR code as well, please. It's very, very exciting.
How you're making it easy for everyone to do. That's perfect. Behavior design. You're a behavior designer, Chris.
And I'm very visual like you are, so this is wonderful. Just a couple of announcements. If you would like to talk about having a conversation about being in this show too, the website for my show is thegoodlisteningtoshow.com. It also syndicates to UK Health Radio, and also very excitingly in the last month as I go to press with Brushwood Media in the States. So it's my cunning plan to trebuchet into the States to get the Americans even more enamored. And then what I'm particularly excited about, and also I'd love to talk to you about this post this, Mike, is I've got a very special series strand using this construct that Mike and I have both been riffing on, using the clearing the tree, to talk about legacy life reflections, which is to record your life story or the story of somebody that you love for posterity, lest we forget before it's too late, with me as your host. And you'll look, if you look at the website, the legacylifereflections.com, it's a series strand that's already been there within the Good Listening To show. But my father, Colin Grimes, is an enigmatic mascot where he's sort of going, cheers to a good life. I recorded my father in the halcyon days of his 80s. He died a year and a half ago, but I got my dad when he was about 83. He lived until he was 86 in the halcyon days of his 80s, and a very precious recording and film of him it is. Back to you, Mike Coulter. You'll enjoy this. This is a final sort of epic coachy question. As this has been your moment in the sunshine, Mike Coulter of the Good Listening To show, Stories of Distinction and Genius, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, Chris, just to thank you for giving me the opportunity to do it. I can see immediately how it fits with the Lifetime Legacy. It's been a bit more of a grown-up version, actually, of what I've been discovering with Do Radio and 3 Wins. Like I said earlier, that by having the discipline of doing 3 Wins for Do Radio, I've been amazed and surprised that I'm sort of figuring out my life in real time. And then when I went through the structure of your show, I found it really, really interesting. And just very quickly, I mean, we've done about 25 shows so far, and I think it's like 86,000 words a show. And when we talk about time, money, mojo, so if we've done 20 odd shows, I've already got like 60 or 70 with 3 subject matters, 60 or 70 stories.
Yes.
Most of which are that have come out of my life. So I think what's been magical about this last hour with you and actually doing the preparation for it, I've almost got half my autobiography written. It's extraordinary. It's just a fantastic gift, that, because when do we find the time to do it? But it's taking no time. There's something really, you're onto something really mind-blowing here, particularly the legacy thing, which is really cool.
Thank you. That's very, very much appreciated and precious feedback. And as I say, going forward, I would love to talk about, because your vibe attracts your tribe, I'd love to talk to you and Do Radio about, lending this structure, curating this structure within that domain, because I love what you're all about and up to as well. As I say, the genesis of the yellow door, crossing the threshold. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of both you and David. I've seen you facilitate as well. I've been to a couple of the workshops that you do. What's that wonderful place in London where you do it?
Cecil Sharp House, Regent's Park.
Yeah.
I've been crazy, isn't it?
I've been twice.
Yeah, I think strictly rehearse there. When they're doing when they're doing the dance and rehearsing, just really good. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Mike. It's been an absolute deep privilege talking to you. And what a fantastic, glorious episode. I've got 2 episodes out of you, a nice, big, lovely, juicy an hour and a half together, which has been lovely.
Thank you, Chris.
Anything else you'd like to say? And thank
you. Let me know when you want to talk about the legacy thing. And can I just give you 2 minutes of top of my head about something?
Yes. So should we do that offline now, or
let's do it offline. Yeah.
So thank you very much for watching. I've been Chris Grimes. This has been Mike Coulter. Thank you very much indeed.